All right, guys, we are on. We are on, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. Thank you, ladies, for coming on. I am welcomed by Stephanie Jewell, which is up to my top, to my left side, and to the bottom is Miss Kashaun Parker. And we are here to have a group discussion about the community. I'll just quote unquote the community because and hey, it's interesting that we're having this conversation because it's Juneteenth Day. Isn't that ironic?
Yep.
And I don't want this conversation to be like a big negative Nancy conversation, but it's worthy of discussion. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of things that jumps off in our community that we know about, but either it gets downplayed or it doesn't get the right attention. And what I mean by the right attention is you need people to step up and say something about it. We know what goes on. We know what kicks off in our streets, but nobody's saying nothing. A lot of people see what's going on, but they choose to just, do, just status quo type shit. And it's like, no, enough is enough of the status quo. You dig what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's why I wanted to have this discussion. And I'm thankful that I'm having it on Juneteenth Day, and I don't care what nobody say.
Right.
So, ladies, I want to start by asking you guys the first question here. And I sent you guys this email, but I'm going to pose this question. Is being Black a culture or a color? Anyone can start. You know what I'm saying? Is that a culture thing, or is it, is it a color?
Ooh,
Anyone?
that's a loaded question.
It is.
Definitely takes time to think about because it could be both. I am a biracial individual and just growing up in my community, both of my parents are actually Black, African American, because I was adopted into my family from my biological Black side. So I identify with my Black family, but my Black family did not identify with me all the time. They called me a half breed. So in that
Mm,
instance, it
mm,
is very interesting because it's like, am I the color? Or you know what I mean? So it's like, what exactly constitutes a half breed? Were they calling me, the half breed as in the color or as in the culture? Because sometimes it is hilarious. We'll be at family reunions and I'll catch myself doing some weird stuff or listening to some weird music, and they'd be like, that's that white in you. That's the
that
white
white
people
is.
in you. I'm like, golly, like this is just what I like to do. Like what? And then I'll be at
Yeah.
my white family and I'm like, you know what? Oh, that's my white side, so I understand that sometimes there are cultural differences that are actually um, built within us, that are
Mm,
within our
mm,
bloodline, that
mm,
are
mm,
not necessarily white or Black, but um, they are of our creation. They're of our bloodline. So is that culture? Is that our race? What is that? Is that deeper than one or the other? Because I
mm,
find myself doing weird stuff all the time, and everybody's like, "That's that white stuff," and I'm like, "No," because it's not. It's not necessarily white or Black. I see Black people doing more and more of the gothic type things, and that's not necessarily
oh
white
yeah.
or Black either.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a cultural thing that is associated outside of Black culture too. It's very interesting though. So I'm very conflicted. That's the answer to your question for me, and that is
Right.
because I was raised how I was raised, as a biracial person in a Black family, being called a half breed, and then I speak proper English and I'm around Ebonics all the time and I code switch. But when I'm in a professional environment, I can speak either or, and I can relate to anybody. If somebody comes in and they're speaking broken English, or what we like to call Ebonics, it's not even broken English. I don't know why people call it that. They don't understand that it's actually a bunch of different languages put together. Um, we, I actually am able to. Actually, there's a study on this that teachers are taught Ebonics so that they can relate to their students, which is phenomenal. In order to get not necessarily on their level, because they're not less knowledgeable, but in order, it's like a language, right? But when you want to connect with people, I'm able to do that. And I think it's broken down barriers where other people have not been able to do that. And they think less of people who speak a certain way. And that's not fair. And you think of our culture and our people, and they come in and they speak a certain way, and people automatically think down on us. And it's like, no, these people can do math. They can run circles around you in algebra. They can read. It's just we speak a certain way. We write a certain way. And these are things that have been taught or passed down from us. So this is how our family speaks, right? This is how I saw all of my family speak versus how I was taught to read. My mother was a school teacher. So it's very interesting. There's lots of different layers to all of this. So it's very interesting. We probably need to pick out specifics and ask specifics in order to really hone in on all of it, because it can become very convoluted and very, as you can see, I'm trying to get through my thoughts wrapped around it, because you
are. And the reason why I ask is because, from my understanding of it, black is just a color. We're not defined by our skin tone.
Right.
You dig what I'm saying? We're not defined by color variants. Our culture is deep, and it's deeply rooted in this society. And like you said, there's many layers to the onion, right? But when you hear somebody say, well, I'm black, it's like, you might want to dig a little deeper than that. It's more variances than just that. You dig what I mean? And that's why I think I posed the question, because we're defined by our color, not because of who we are.
Right.
And I think a lot of us get lost in the sauce when it comes to the color thing. It's like, oh, he's black. It's like, yeah, actually, I'm not. Actually, I have indigenous, bloodline in me. You know what I'm saying? So can you say that I'm black? It's like, no, because it's a color. It doesn't define you. You dig what I'm saying? So that's why I propose a question. Kashaun, do you have anything you want to blend into that?
Yeah, only to say I tend to agree with both of you. And Stephanie, I love how you led with the idea that black, is it a cultural thing or is it a color? And then you just really blatantly saying it's both. And I think that's where I stand too, and that it's a both thing. I think that it's a color, as our culture has defined us, right? And it's that unavoidable truth. And in the same regard, though, as a culture, how beautiful is it to stand and represent? How beautiful is it to be, understanding of everything that we have come through over the stretch of time, and look at what it means to say I am black. I mean, that's a pride thing, right? And I own it and I wear it, and I understand that yes, we have so far to go, but oh boy, look at how far we've come. So for me, it's both. It is both.
Yeah, that's powerful. I love
it. Yeah. And you mentioned, the history of it. And it's like, wow, we've come from such a long way of trauma, more trauma, and more trauma. And we got so lost in that. Not only did we get lost in that, ladies, we lost ourselves. Our people lost themselves in the trauma. and we've allowed others to dictate who we are. We've allowed others to classify us as something that we are not. And what we did do, we took those classifications and we made it our own. That's why we can say, oh, I'm this, I'm Black, because I took it. It still doesn't mean that I'm not a part of something else, but I am this. I can't claim this. This is mine. And nobody else is going to take that. Many people want to be like us, but no, this is us. This is our shit. Go get your own. So, so let me move on to my next question. And this is in terms of our environment, okay? In terms of our environment, you see the crime and violence that used to ravage our communities. Because think about it, ladies. Back in the day, we couldn't go in certain neighborhoods. We just couldn't do it. If you heard a certain phrase or a certain area, you thought about something, you know, that was negative about these areas and all the violence and all the drama that used to go on there. Do you feel that things have gotten better in terms of the crime and the violence that used to, you know, have a bad impact on our communities? If not, what do you feel needs to be done to make our communities safer? Kashaun, I'll start with you.
So yeah, I was gonna say, I think I'll lead this one. So I will say, Mark, I think that we have gotten better. And I say that in a way that, you know, just generationally, we are making strides, right? In the way that we educate our children, in the way that we bring them up, and the things that we instill in them, that, you know, I could say, at least for me being a parent, there are things that I'm learning and I'm teaching my children that were not taught to me. And so those values that I'm instilling in them, they're going to take forth and they're going to do better with it, and they're going to move that notch forward. However, that being said, I still believe we have so much further to go. I do look at, I mean, I'm not someone that kind of gets wrapped up in the news because it's so depressing. But when I tune to it, it's still the same tune. It's still the same song. It's still and it's like more of the same. How much longer until we finally get it? Until we finally, you know, break free from some of the things that tend to plague our neighborhoods and our communities and our youth. And I think that we are making progress, but I don't think we're there quite yet. I think we still have so much further to go.
Indeed, indeed. Stephanie.
Oh, I am right there with you. Having been raised in the education field, my mother was an educator, father hardworking. I knew better than to get caught or even associate myself with certain types of behaviors or just negativity. And one of the things that I do with my own child is we avoid behaviors and negativities and different things like that. So raising your child to know better and to do better is definitely half the battle. But what about the other half of that battle, which is exactly what you said? So that area where we have to improve definitely is that area where what do we do, right? We're looking at a crisis in the education field right now, being that budget, which is all controlled by politics. So then we look at what control we have. And it's so scary because as parents, that is our control, is our education to our children. But then you have the government that intervenes and says, okay, no, we have control of your children, and then they take control of our children, and then there are certain things that are out of our control. And so I ask myself, what level of involvement does the government play in the amount of violence that is in our community? And so coming from a recent position that I held, where I was actually assessing the violence in the community and the effects on youth, that is actually one of the major stats that I would be pulling from. And it's just, like I said, it's very scary to see that you can educate, but gun control, giving youth something to do that's, healthy within the city,
Yeah.
educating parents, giving resources to parents, giving more resources to the youth, giving just what is it called? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on it. Just the struggle in the city in economics, just in general. What is it called, you guys? There's a word for it. When we're all struggling. Poverty. There we go. Poverty.
Okay, yeah.
It was on the tip of my tongue. that's my, listen, you guys. Actually,
Hey, Kashaun, I bet you was thinking all some crazy words, dude.
Poverty, you guys. It's poverty.
Expeditionalidocious. What? No.
Right. Poverty plays one of the biggest roles in violence and access to resources. And, when people don't have access, or when youth don't have access, we see it play out. So there's so many different factors also that come into play. I was responsible for pulling this data, but who controls all the access to that, and who would easily be a part of the solution, but they're not. And so that is the scariest thing to think about. And why isn't there more being done? And so that's kind of my stance. But Kashaun, you hit the nail on the head. It really does start at home. My parents taught me better, and I was definitely afraid of getting in trouble. Did I get in trouble? Absolutely, but petty stuff. I wasn't out here stealing cars, though. I drive one of those cars that these kids are out here stealing. So I could never fathom wanting to be caught in things like that. But these kids nowadays, what do they have to look forward to? And so again, there's just so many different things that that are in our control as parents, but out of our control as well. So where, like you said, bring some solutions, right? What are those solutions?
Well, and I'll add to that really quickly, Mark, and just to say that I think it's safe to say we all grew up in an era where we're like, it takes a village, right? It was the community joining together. So where my parents might not have been able to pick up the slack, you had someone, and it didn't even have to be a relative. It was down the street. They knew you by name. They knew who your mom was. They knew, where you belong. And if you were out of line by even an inch, they didn't waste any time, and we've somehow gotten away from that. And right now is when it's most valuable, because we have more information at our fingertips than ever before. So that information needs to be filtrated through wisdom, through experience, right? And who better has that than those that are within our communities? But now, for whatever reason, the community aspect of it is lost.
Yep. Everybody's afraid. I feel like everybody is afraid. And it's like, we shouldn't be afraid. But honestly, let me tell you, I am afraid. When I was in the mall, and these kids were just cursing up a storm in front of me. And I'm like, excuse me. Hey, now, even though I was afraid, I still gave them the mama eyes. And when they turned around and they thought they were going to say something crazy to me, I looked at them and I did the how the mamas do. The what? You got something to say? They rolled their eyes and they turned back around, because what you're not going to do is.
Right. Yeah.
Listen, I was crazy. Hey, I was scared, y'all. But you can't. But here, honestly, just like driving and somebody pull out a gun and shoot at you because you beeped at them to go at the green light. There is fear. Our society, we're all driven by fear. And it's so sad that you can't see something and say something. And so that comes back to, Mark, what you were talking about. Why is it that we're living in a society where we can't see something and correct and help and say something? We have to live in fear of our lives just because we want to live safely. And that's so sad, but that is the truth. I do fear that I can't remind the person ahead of me to go, and we only have a limited time at this arrow, because they might get mad and pull out a gun and want to shoot at me. Like, it's crazy, but that is the truth of it. And the community does not, respond like it used to. Oh, Kashaun, that is a really good observation, because I wish somebody would go back and tell my mama that they saw me out doing something.
It was over.
Because I'm gonna tell you, hey, listen, all y'all hit nails on the heads at the same damn time, because growing up, with me as well, I grew up, if we were short on eggs or something, it wouldn't be nothing to go in that store and grab some eggs from somebody,
Yes.
or some sugar, or some milk, something, or butter. It was like that growing up. We looked out for one another. I don't see that shit at all now. It's anything goes, and people are living hand to mouth too much. It's too many of that going on in our neighborhoods to be sitting here, oh, I'm gonna get this first before you do. It's like we all need to just slow our asses down and recognize that we are in the same damn battle, right? We need to pool our own resources and do for our damn selves, because we're sitting here in competition, but at the meantime, we all broke up in here.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody broke, but you still want to roll with the Joneses and try and compete with this and that, and you still ain't going nowhere. You're still in the same spot, still driving the same car. If you're driving the same car, you still got the same job. You ain't going to school to get no better. Your value of school sucks. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
What are we
You
doing?
dig what I'm saying? Because like, we weren't raised that way. And that is part of the problem. The raising.
Goes back to what Kashaun said.
Iron sharpens iron. Iron sharpens iron, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all know that. But one thing that I always say too is, negligence begets more negligence.
Yeah.
You can only teach a person what you know. If you grow up in a neighborhood where, in an environment, rather, in a home environment where it's just all messed up, I want to go and say some other trifling words, but I'm not. But if it's just negative and all messed up, what makes you think that that kid is going to grow up to be better than you? You're not providing the tools to make that kid successful. And if more people are in that same neighborhood that think like that person, that's a recipe for disaster. It is. It's a time bomb waiting to explode, because you got everybody broke as hell, trifling as hell, living in the same neighborhood, doing the same trifling stuff, and they're raising kids in these neighborhoods. What good is going to come out of that? Can we say pipeline to prison? I'll say that for another question. But I just want to put y'all some food for thought. Stephanie, this question is for you. You work with children and families. You had a chance to look at the daily trials and tribulations of what families dealt with. Talk to us about some of the problems you experienced.
So getting back to poverty, one of the things that you just mentioned, we talk about access to resources. That was huge. Average family income to the access to food, necessities. So we know rent assistance exists. It's still not necessarily that helpful if they're in highly violent neighborhoods. One family I visited had 10 kids in one house, mom and grandma by themselves, raising all these kids. And they had just had a shootout right in front of that house the night before I came to visit. Bullet holes were in the wall in the living room when I came. And it went through the living room, through the stairs, through the next set of stairs, through that hallway. And so when you have to worry about yourself and 10 children and your mother, as a parent, it's nice to have safe housing, but that's not safe housing. Or it's nice to have secure housing. They call that secure housing. So Section 8 and rent assistance, things like that, when you're putting people in worse situations than they should be, violence wise, it's not necessarily conducive to raising healthy families. Then, we have people who are on food share. What is the appropriate amount of food share, right? And then what are people doing with their food share? If they don't have an adequate income, you do have people that are selling their food share. Is that the right thing to do? Not necessarily, but we can't tell people what to do in order to get cash, right? Some people say that's better than selling their bodies or selling it for whatever. But what do people do to get jobs? So then we talk about employment. What is W-2 doing to help families find employment? So we talk about all these systematic issues for parents, whether they want to find a job, whether they have disabilities and can't find a job, or what is going on, or what about the parents that are taking care of children with severe special needs or their own special needs, right? All of these different conditions exist. And this is what's actually taking place. It's not that our people are lazy. Our people are not necessarily lazy. Are there a fair share of people that are lazy? Absolutely. We don't have to hone in on those people. However, the media will have us hone in on those people. But the main issue is that the resources are not getting to the people, and the resources that are available are not necessarily effective. And they are not actually, some of the resources that are supposed to be helping the people are not actually getting to the people like they're supposed to be getting it, or like they say they're supposed to be getting to the people. And it's not doing them any justice. And so it's a very interesting system, but again, it's all politically controlled. And so you have to go through all these different political channels to say, hey, here's what's happening. Why isn't this happening? And there's just a long, drawn out process to try and get justice, or to try and seek, improvements in policies and systems. And I mean, unless there's fraud taking place, they don't pay attention, as long as the majority of people and the majority of the system is working. So that's just been my take in the system. And even having been on food share, Badger Care, child care assistance myself, I was an AmeriCorps member, and it says in the policy, clear as day, how my benefits should have been administered to me. But for whatever reason, my benefits were completely messed up, and nobody tended to my case until my child and I were cut off completely for months. And I had to file a grievance, and I was not turned back on until after I lost my AmeriCorps position. Luckily, I was able to start a whole new one, but that's actually the state of that system. And that's very sad, because you have people that are really in need of those benefits. So those are just some of the things within that system that we experience as consumers, as people that need those services. Did I answer the question? Just a quick note. I actually, when we get to mental health, Vyvanse is on a national shortage. So I actually went off of my ADHD medicine. I'm all natural now. Yep. Yep. So I actually started a mushroom complex. So I'm free balling, as they say. So this is me unmedicated, you guys.
That's the F word. No.
Sorry.
No. So quick question. So is working, I guess, where you worked at, did you see more of a checks and balances thing versus delivery of services to the family?
Nope, not at all. I saw there was a really large funding source, and there was a need. There was a promise to deliver services, but every family I went to do the assessment of their youth, to say how that youth had been recovering from a violent or traumatic event, every family said the exact same thing. Where are the resources? We have yet to receive the resources. Where is our worker? We have yet to see our worker. And so I would deliver that message back to management or leadership, and they're like, okay, we'll get the person on it. By the time I would go back to try and get more data, which this process was a 3-month process to collect data to track how that youth was recovering during this process, still nothing was done. By the 6-month mark of me collecting this data and still nothing had been delivered as far as resources or case management, red flags had raised for me. And so I took it above. And so, no, it was not, there weren't, the services that were promised to the families were not being delivered. And they have proof of that. I have proof of that. And so that is a part of a bigger system issue. The funding they received from SAMHSA, federal government, which is a federal government program, were not adequately being delivered to the families. And there was one particular family who told me, and they were willing to speak out on their behalf. They begged for the services for over 1.5 years before somebody picked up their case. And by the time they picked up their case, one of the parents had died. And so in the passing of that parent, nobody still picked up their case. Nobody still delivered services. By the time this youth had finally started receiving services, that youth almost aged out of the program. They only had 3 months left in the program. There was nothing they could do in the program. So here's the other thing about this. I hate being a whistleblower, right? That is the most uncomfortable thing because that puts a red flag on my back. But we talk about seeing something and saying something. If we are going to be and do right, I'm a person of integrity, no matter where I go and what I do. I want to help improve the quality of services being delivered in my community, no matter where I'm at and no matter what I'm doing. And that is something that I am passionate about within my community. And so if that means I do have to wear a red flag on my back, a mark on my back, so put it on there. But when you see a family that is supposed to receive services because their youth is struggling through being shot while sitting innocently in his home, and then losing his father and suffering mental health crisis, not receive the services he's supposed to receive. Let's talk about why and what's not happening. And we're promising resources and services that he's not receiving. So that's what drives me. And again, I fail to understand how we do have all these resources in the city of Milwaukee through these huge corporations or through the government that are not adequately meeting the needs of our youth and our families. So that was my experience.
Okay. Regarding social media, we're talking about social media right now for a little bit. We've been inundated with videos of Black women talking real greasy about Black men and vice versa, right? And vice versa. I hate that, by the way. Hate it. I know that there's good men and women out there. Do you believe that social media is pushing a negative narrative about Black people to convince the world that Black men and women are no good and disillusioned to the concepts of relationships? No, it's a little long-winded. Kashaun, I want you to head that off. Do you believe that social media is pushing a negative narrative or agenda about Black people to convince the world that we're no good and disillusioned to the concepts of relationships? Based on what you see on social media and the propaganda that's being pushed out there. It's loaded, but you get what I'm saying.
And I might ruffle some feathers with this one, but I think it goes back to my belief on the idea of the power of community, right? I don't think it's a social media thing. I think it's an us thing. Social media is a platform, right? Yeah. And because when at the same time you're saying, you know, the way that it's portraying us, my social media is a reflective of that. I've got amazing individuals on my social media doing wonderful things, but that's who I'm connected with, right? And so when we talk about the things that are there that might not be in the best light, the idea goes back to our communities. What are we doing within our communities? What message are we pushing? How are we teaching them? What values are we instilling in them? Because that's the foundation. And then those individuals, they grow up and they form their own tribes. And now the tribe is on social media. So you happen to see a lot. I mean, I do see um our young youth just doing amazing things on social media. I've seen entrepreneurs, I've seen chefs, I've seen, scholars, like all the whole gamut. So I think it's a matter of what we do with this wonderful tool. I don't think there's any kind of like underlying premise, if you will, for social media. It is the platform, it is the tool. It's what we do with that tool that's subjecting our viewpoint and how we're portrayed and the things that we do, right? In some communities, we're on there and we're flashing things we shouldn't be flashing, and we're talking about things we shouldn't be talking about it, because that's what we're around. We're a product of our environment, right? As opposed to somebody else, and their exposure is a little different. So they're talking about different things and their exposure is different, and you know what I mean? And so I don't know that it's a social media thing. I think I'm spinning in circles here now, but I want to be clear. It's not a social media thing. I think it's just a people thing. It's a community thing.
Yeah. I mean, we're here to talk, you know what I'm saying, and have fun doing it. Stephanie.
She is absolutely correct, because you know what? As I grow and I mature, and I think sometimes I mature, and I say that for a reason. When I get mad at my significant other and I think I had made progress, I'm like, okay, I don't need social media to talk crap and blah, 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 blah. I am one of those negativity spewers. Like, I'll see a post and I'm like, oh, this hits home. Healing. I cannot stress enough the importance of healing. And Miss Kashaun, yes, the community that you are around is so important. If I was surrounded by people who said, Stephanie, you seem a little bitter, you seem broken, you seem hurt, just come, let me wrap my arms around you. Let's go on a healing retreat. What can we do to help you heal? If there's anything we can do to help you heal, and sometimes it's not for other people to do. However, when I am in a world where it is egged on, so to speak, where it's like, oh, okay, people do clap for bitterness and anger, and it's funny to post a funny meme where you're talking crap, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, this is funny, and what I'm doing is funny. It's getting a reaction. Okay, now I'm a Facebook comedian. First of all, I don't get paid enough to be a Facebook comedian. If I did, then okay, I can see it as, okay, it's just funny and we're getting paid to be a Facebook comedian. However, you need to take a mask off. And so that is a realization for me, because it's like years of bad relationships, domestic violence, just relationships and things that just didn't go my way, or just people that didn't work out. And it's like, okay, at what point do you say, heal, let that stuff go? You don't have to post your negative emotions. And for me, like, I take social media to the point where I am venting. Okay, I had a bad day. I found some memes that I want to post and just vent there. Like, I have to take accountability for how I'm showing up on social media and posting. And so that's my accountability piece for today. And sometimes you do have to look at how other people are representing themselves and say, you know what? Okay, I can appreciate how everybody else is venting, or where they're venting, or how they're venting. And I don't want to make myself look this crazy. Like, let me figure something else out. And have I made it there yet? Some days for me are better than others, But I'm working on it every day. But man, if I see, especially, I think it's called Talk Conversation or Tonight's Conversation. It's this group of panelists that go around and they talk about relationship issues. And I mean, almost everything they say hit home for me. Like they talk about cheating, they talk about the men that philander. And one of the things about me, I don't when I relate to people, that's my thing. I love relating to people because I grew up an only child. So being by myself really bothers me. But I'm one of those people where after so much social interaction, I do need to be by myself. So it's weird. But listening to how they relate, I really am drawn into, oh my gosh, everything they say hits home. So I'm posting what they're saying. And so it's like you said, Ms. Kashaun, seriously, yeah. If you're around that type of crowd, if you're around those types of people, yep, you're probably doing that same thing. And so it's you. I know they say birds of a feather. It shouldn't be that way because I do have the ability to be different and turn it on and turn it off. But at the same time, I find myself really overly indulging and talking smack right along with everybody else. And it's not necessarily healthy. So we need to be self-aware, and that's my struggle. So I'm working on it, y'all. I'm working on it.
All right. It's all work in progress, man. Life is a work in progress. Shit. But I agree with both of you that it's not about, I guess, what you see. It's about what you do with what you have. Like you said, the tools. What you do with the tools, that's what you should focus on. But where I was going with it is that you see so much. All you gotta do is turn your phone on, and you're seeing, shots of women just shitting on dudes and dudes shitting on girls, and it's like, what's all this shitting going on? It's like, this is crazy. It's like, I don't want to wake up in the morning and the first thing I see when I look on Instagram, then it's like, wait a minute. Life has got to be better than this, y'all.
We're all hurt. Not healing. Yeah. We say we're healing, but nobody's actually healing. And then we're spitting back and forth at each other. Like, why?
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, and everybody's just angry, and that's why I think I spend a lot of time, doing what you do, Stephanie, which is posting positive stuff. I don't look for all the negativity. They can have that. They can have it. But I believe, in the fact that, one, and it goes back to what you were saying, Kashaun, about company. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Basically.
Two, if I am a positive-minded individual, how dare I pollute my mind with negative crap? I'm gonna project how I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling positive, even if I'm feeling negative, my hope is to make somebody feel positive. So I'm going to project some positive stuff out there. I don't do negative crap. I don't do that. Sometimes I feel like I want to. Believe me, there's days that I want to, but I won't do that because that's not who I am. I'm not going to project my negativity on anybody. You dig what I'm saying? Because I don't want to mess up somebody's day. I don't want to make my day worse by projecting my negativity. And I also understand, ladies, that things happen, but things pass.
Can I tell you one other thing? I'm sorry to interrupt you. One of the things I most recently, and y'all, I'm slow, okay? Listen, my parents protect me. All right, they protect me for a reason. I realize my professional world is impacted by how I post. And I am a very professional individual. I can do a professional job. I work the hell out of a professional realm. I organize businesses. And so professionally speaking, when a business or an organization looks at my personal Facebook, that is not very becoming of my professional lifestyle. And so as much as we want to say, oh, they shouldn't be looking at how we're posting personally and blah, 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 blah. As a matter of fact, they do. And it does have a bearing on whether you get the job that you're applying for or the position you're looking to be appointed for. And so I recently applied for this different job within the community where, you know, you're really helping children and families. And then I looked at my posting and I'm like, ooh, you know what? It's not that I'm not deserving. I've done the work. I have the credentials and things like that. But I was like, you know, no, girl, what are you doing? And I had to check myself. And so if I wouldn't get this job, I'm like, you know what? I don't blame them for looking at my social media. And that is something that you have to check yourself about. And I had to have that moment with myself. And I'm like, yep. But at some point we have to hold ourselves accountable. And so that was my moment. And I felt like, okay, time to grow up. Like, at what point do we take social media and say it's not worth what it costs, right, in representation of who we are, who we really are, right? And so that was my learning point, because I love my selfies. I love posting when I'm on vacation. I love my bikinis. I love who I am. I'm a fun-loving person, but at the same time, I am trying to grow a business. I am trying to grow and prosper, right? And there are some things that just aren't representative of that in the professional world. And that was, when I look back, I'm like, okay. And I learned that on LinkedIn. I was going through some posts. I was like, okay, time to grow up. So that was a hard lesson for me, because sometimes to conceptualize things, I don't get it until it's too late. And so that was one thing that was huge for me when it comes to social media and posting. So yeah. Okay, I'll shut up now. Sorry, y'all.
No, I love that. I'll piggyback on that though, Stephanie. I think you're right. You know, because when I look at this woman, I'm a brand. At the end of the day, and it doesn't matter where my brand shows up, it's consistent. It's consistent with who I am. And so I have to be mindful of that, personally and professionally. You know, it's like there's no code switching here. This is what you get. And so when I show up, I'm showing up. And so is that reflective of who and what I want it to be? You can go through any channel of mine and you're going to find the same Kashaun. It's consistent because Kashaun is a brand, and it's taken a long time to realize that. I mean, and to have it, you know, stick and hit home, because then we get into the idea of, well, now I got to make my social media this certain way because who's going to come look? Listen, child, that's too much work. What we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that we're mindful. We're going to make sure that we are socially responsible. We're going to do all the things that we need to do, because this is what you see is what you get. And I think that that's really what we need to adapt and look into going forward, because it'll change the game, I think.
There you go. I love
that. And be authentic with who you are too.
That's it. That's it.
Be authentic. Stephanie, as you were talking, my wife made she mentioned a comment here on Facebook here, and I'm gonna read it off to you guys. The problem is that anyone can get on social media and claim to be a certified relationship expert or a love guru, and people are so desperate for validation and love that they eat it with a spoon. Another when the fact is they're a bitter, broken-hearted person who blames everyone of the opposite sex when no person hurt them.
That's deep.
Thoughts on that? It's deep, ain't it? Yeah.
That's deep.
Silence is good.
Yeah, because you know what? You got to think through that. You know which part I'm hung up on is the part where she said, when nobody hurt them. How many times do we fall in love with the potential of somebody? I know I'm guilty of that, where somebody did tell me who they were. They did show me, hey, I don't want a relationship. And no, I'm you know, here today, gone tomorrow. And I'm just like, but no, you're so perfect for me. And I'm bitter because they didn't want to stay. And now I'm sitting up here talking crap about people ain't this
Talking
or people
greasy.
ain't that. You know what I'm saying? But they
Talking
did
greasy.
tell me the truth. Listen, there have been times where I'm in the wrong. So she is absolute that we again in reflection and growing up, you have to come to terms with sometimes you are your own bitter person when you shouldn't be. There have been times where I have broken my own hurt, not the other person, and then I had the nerve to slander them because I wanted them but they didn't want me. Like, okay, no, that's not fair. No, we have to stop that. Male, female alike. You don't know it. And they were honest. How many times have we been honest with people and then they get mad at us because we've been honest? No. So I see where that's absolutely true.
Good. I'm going to read some information here, and I'm going to say this to ask this question. All right, so follow me here. 2017 study showed that high poverty neighborhoods are typically characterized by poor quality schools, less access to jobs, social networks, and healthcare, higher rates of crime, pollution, congestion, and noise. This also included in that. Boys tend to be more sensitive to their environment growing up. This leads to behavioral issues, lower education attainment, lower work earnings, and more. Here's the question. Do you feel that children raised in these environments are doomed to fail and end up in prison or worse? Kashaun.
Okay, without filtering it, I think the first thing that came to my mind was rather than being doomed to fail, I think they're being groomed to fail. It's just the nature of the beast, right? It's like
love that. Yeah.
It's the sad and ugly truth, you know what I mean? And spending time in the community and talking to some of these, what I say are young men, and you listen to them and you hear, their futuristic outlook and then their prognosis for what the reality is. I mean, it's gut-wrenching, it's heartbreaking. And so it's almost like when they look at the things that they are up against, it's like the deck is stacked against them and they know it. And so their mind begins to try to grapple with, how do I get, beyond where I am and what do I need to do? And understanding that this system that is here supposedly to make me better is not doing anything to support what I'm doing. However, it is a true narrative of everything that I'm working hard not to become. So I'm working not to become a statistic, but everything around me shows the statistics, right? And this hits home for me because I'm a single mom. And one of the things that I grappled with was I didn't want my kids to be, labeled by anybody's statistic. I mean, and that's why I push myself so hard. That's why I do the work that I do, because I'm like, oh, hell no. we're not going that route, right? We're going to do something different. But I understand that takes a level of perseverance and tenacity that not everyone has. And so, that grooming, it really takes form because the breeding ground is there. They're literally being bred for their own, stake of a lack of survival. And it's sad to see, but I mean, that's the state that I see anyway.
Steph, you have anything?
Absolutely. So exactly what Ms. Kashaun said is the grooming part. Think of what they teach. Our books in the school system are not even accurate. They're not accurate to our history, our culture, anything that is relevant to our success. They groom us to get jobs for their economy. Okay. And if they see that we are a problem early on, they flag us early on. And we have issues early on throughout our entire career in school up until we're released from school or we go to juvie, or like you said, it's the prison pipeline. It starts at those early ages. They put us in special needs classes. They put us on medication. They have groomed the parents to accept the money that comes along with those special needs classes. Okay, where all they need is a father figure. Sometimes all they need is a what else, a mentor, something, somebody else, or like Miss Kashaun said, community, the village to show up to help support them. But they really have been groomed to not be able to be functioning adults. They don't know anything much other than hustle, right? What do they see other people in the community doing? What do they see fathers? What do they see anybody else in the community doing? What opportunities do they have when they do make it to graduation? Do they make it to graduation? Look at those statistics. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so when we look at those statistics, it's very low rates. They don't even make it that far, which is crazy to me. And so they really are groomed for failure and not a lot of success. And the ones that do make it out, they have very specific purposes and reasonings to make it out. They a lot of times people, culture vultures, they make money off of them. So rappers, sports figures, football, basketball, you see these kids going to the schools that are making these colleges millions of dollars. You see these kids,
not seeing a dime of it.
They're not seeing a dime of it, but these colleges are. Do you remember the colleges that were recently reprimanded for making millions and millions, but these kids, all they were getting was the free ride to school? So
Fab Five. The Fab Five was a prime example of that.
Exactly. And so these kids, what did they get? There was a reason they were not groomed for failure. They were groomed for these white colleges for their success, and so it's just very interesting to see how they will pluck, our kids for what they want them to have, football especially. Okay. But don't let them be too good, better than their own. It's very interesting. It's very sick to see, actually. We're only good to them for certain things. The NFL, pluck us for the NFL. So we're entertainment. We are a lot of times worth their entertainment, but we can't be too good, which is really crazy. But if you sit back and you watch what they do, they don't let us get too good, right? There's always a cap. There's always a cutoff. But yeah, Miss Kashaun, you definitely on point. They groom those kids, and then they funnel them where they want us to go. And they funnel the women. They funnel women too. Go have more babies. Have babies at the age of 12, 13, 14. They have childcare in the high school. When we start having childcare in the doggone high school? Sorry, y'all.
Oh no. Hey. I told you already. We can talk.
Right, so, but what are we supporting here? What are we doing? Right, child care in the high schools, that wasn't ever a thing. We were walking around with the babies that prevented us from wanting to have babies. I didn't want one of them with fake dolls. If I
saw a pregnant person in high school, they weren't going to school.
They weren't going to school.
Right,
they weren't going to school.
Now we're promoting this.
Listen, and I remember as a sophomore or a junior back in high school, I remember this one female that I was friends with. She got pregnant, and I guess when she started to show, she stopped going to school, and I haven't seen her since. So that particular issue was, I didn't see no daycares in high schools, and I really didn't see a lot of pregnant girls in high school back then.
Mhm.
And to your point, Stephanie, about the football piece, they are now starting to pay certain players depending on their talent level in college.
Oh, good.
Really?
Yes, they are
Okay.
starting to pay players, and so they're collecting big paychecks before they even get to the pros.
About time. How many kids have come and gone with only a free bachelor's degree? Which is still
Mm.
good. I take a free education because I ain't gonna tell y'all how much I owe. And all I
And
got is my bachelor's degree.
listen,
For now.
and
I'm gonna
also,
try and go back.
when I worked as a corrections officer, uh, I had many conversations, ladies, with guys and women. They all told me that the environments that they grew up in pretty much was part of the reason why they were in jail. They grew up in dysfunctional environments. They grew up in environments where domestic violence and alcohol
Yep.
abuse and drug abuse was rampant. They
Yep.
grew up in these very dysfunctional environments.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, damn near all of them told me the same thing. And to add more salt to the wound, a father wasn't involved.
Yep.
They were raised by grandparents, aunts, you know, they grew up with their cousins, and everybody in the household was jacked. Everybody,
Which brings me to,
everybody.
I'm so glad you said that, because that comes back to, you know how you have men and women going back and forth talking about how women are so masculine, right? And you have a lot of women that say, but I had to be the man, I had to be the father. With there are women that really do believe and feel that they had to be the father. Therefore, they feel very masculine. So that is a thing, but that is also a part of how women were made to feel without fathers being present. So then that's contributing to that whole back and forth that we were just talking about, where women are like, men are weak and men are like, well, women are so masculine, we can't approach them. They're no longer feminine. That is a huge dynamic that is crazy to see. But I get it, because when you are a woman and you are raising kids without a father, or when you're a man, it goes both ways though too. When you're a man raising kids without a mother, you have to tend to kids a certain way. I'm actually dating someone who raised a daughter without the mother being present, and I'm like, you are such a brute. He knows only manly things, and I'm like, this is a girl. You have to raise her with some sort of feminine traits. He's just like brute all day. And I'm like, I enter the picture and I'm like, girl, pedicures, manicures, let's go do the girly stuff, And he's like, no, it's manly stuff all day. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so interesting. But there's a reason why that dynamic exists,
Yeah.
So I can actually see why that dynamic exists, but why it's so exacerbated, I don't, maybe because it's just all over the place. I don't know.
I think it's because it's
I
unbalanced.
would
Ooh.
say what? Say it again.
I think it's because
Balance.
it's unbalanced. We've lost our sense
There you
of
go.
what it really means to have dual partnerships in our homes.
Yeah.
Right. And so as a woman, again, being in that position where I say I kind of took the choice. I chose that, to raise my kids after the loss of my husband, because I knew what it would take, and I understood, who I had and what I was blessed to be with. And so for me, it was a very conscious choice after some time to say, no, I'm going to do this. But I never assumed the role of my husband. It's
There you go.
always mom. Right?
There
And
you
I
go.
understand where my boundary lines are. I
Yep.
understand, the things that I can give them. And then I put them in environments to where they could get what it was that I didn't have the capacity to fulfill for them. and understanding that me not having that capacity did not say anything against me and who I am as a woman. It just, that's not my role to fill. So I have a young man, I have a young son, he's 20 years old, and there's things that he has had to learn that mom just couldn't teach. And mom is okay with that, right? So what did mom do? Mom went to others that could. This is my son, this is my treasure, this is my prize. And I trusted them to instill in him the things that I couldn't necessarily give him. And so in terms of he and I, it was never the sense of, well, my mom was my dad. Absolutely not. Let's be clear. I'm not interested in that. But I think in many households, that woman, she, for whatever reason, and I always call it a choice because I believe it is a choice. I think you choose who you have children with. You choose, what kind of dynamic you're going to bring anybody in it. And I think we get so caught up in the complex of the woo phase that we look over the red flags, the things that are clearly showing up, and we proceed forward anyway. And then we're stuck with this dynamic of family. And now we got to step in and really fulfill these roles that we otherwise wouldn't consider ourselves having to fulfill. That being the case, I don't think there's ever a past to step in and say, I'm mom and dad. For a while, I think one of my biggest challenges was Father's Day would come around and people would say, well, happy Father's Day because you're doing both. And it was so offensive, right? Because I'm like, no, that's not what this is.
Please don't do that.
That's not how this works. I am a single mother. I have no interest in fathering my children. That's not what this is about, And so for women, though, I think that maybe it's the idea of them feeling a strong sense of what it is that they get to do versus what they have to do. And then realizing that they get to create that dynamic any way that they choose, and them stepping into that role. They don't have to be the man. They're choosing to, for whatever reason. And if they chose a dud, that's because that's what they chose. And I think it's a poor reflection. I can't sit there and tell you how to be a man. I mean, I have no idea what it's like to be in your shoes. And I'm not gonna bash you for being the best kind of man that you can be.
And you better not.
Right.
You better not try and teach me how to do it.
Okay.
No.
And I don't want you coming and stepping in my warehouse telling me what it takes to be a woman just because what your mother did.
I don't know how it is. I don't know how it is.
No.
And I don't want you to try. It's insulting if you were to try. I'm just saying.
Yes. Yeah. Stay in your lane.
But you see, that's why it is so vital for men to be active and involved. Even if they're not in a relationship with the mom, it's still your responsibility to be active and involved with the child or the children, period. She don't want you, bro. Get over that. Stop, get out your fag body, get over it.
Now we're out.
Take care of shorty.
And same thing with mothers, bitter mothers.
Get out your chest.
He has moved on, or he did what he did.
Man.
Don't keep the children away from him because you're bitter. Allow him to be a father. There are so many women that are like that, and then they want to claim they're both. Girl, that's your problem. You're doing too much.
And that's a big problem.
Indeed. It is.
That's a big problem that I'm noticing amongst our community, that a lot of women, they're taking on the role of the man and the woman because they're hurt. And it's like, okay, I get that you're hurt, but you're taking away from the kids and the dad because you're bitter. So how is that going to play out when your kids grow up and despise their dad because your ass was upset? And all that shit could have been avoided by you two just coming together and say, look, I'm mad at you for whatever, but take care of our kids, man. I mean, and to your point, Stephanie, about or actually it was Kashaun, I'm sorry, about roles. Men don't know their role because they weren't taught how to be men. They weren't raised by somebody. They weren't raised by dudes. They weren't raised by men who knew how to be men. Let's keep it a buck. A lot of these bros, they don't know what it is to be masculine. They don't know how it is to walk in their masculinity. They weren't raised that way.
I asked a man that I was dating, I said, okay, who taught you how to be a man? And he flat out said, nobody. I learned by observing different men around me, but I essentially came up with being a man on my own. And when I tell you this individual, I can't, oh my gosh, Miss Kashaun, you are absolutely right. I can't tell a man how to be a man. I can only tell a man how I want to be treated.
Yeah.
But when he struggled to just make a connection with me and everybody around him, and I would try to just communicate that, and he would temper tantrum. And I'm like, that's not how you communicate. Even basic communication was an issue with this individual. It's like, okay, how do you draw those people back to you need a mentor? You need a man at this old age to teach you how to be a man still, because ego sets in and ego is at play. Mental health a lot of times is at play. What do you do then? Mark, that's a question for you. you got questions for us. What do you do as a man when men and their ego and their mental health are getting in the way of these relationships and being able to become men?
That's deep. I have an answer for that. When I was younger, though, the person you see now wasn't the person that I was back then. I had to go through some life lessons. I had to take some knocks across my head and grow the fuck up. I've made decisions that weren't in the best, for the people that needed me, but I grew up. In my mental health, as you guys know, I had to get help for that, because it was to some effect affecting how I was a dad to my kids. Once I did that, and it made me realize just how important it was for me to be present, because I had to be present to myself. I had to learn to accept who I am. Okay with that, right? Once I was able to swallow that pill, I saw life through a different lens, man. And I tell people, this whole story about how my daughter, she was pretty much the spark that changed my life, because I had to raise my daughter for her first year. Totally mind-boggling, because it was a girl. I didn't know anything about raising a girl because I'm a man. But one thing that it did teach me, though, through that experience, ladies, was as a dad, I knew that I would kill for my daughter. I knew that if she needed something, I was going to give it to her. If she needed anything from a man, it was going to be her daddy that was going to be the one to give it to her. Ain't going to be no other dude stepping in the role. I got that. You feel what I'm saying? I took on that role when I looked at her as a baby, like, okay, this is you. Heaven and earth for her. So that made me grow the fuck up quick. Pardon my English, but it is what it is. That made me realize, like, yo, you're a father. Step up and be one. So through all the trials and tribulations with me and her mom, when we had arguments and didn't really see eye to eye, that's cool. This is my kid. She never took it upon herself to not let me see my kid. She let me be dad. She let me be the man. And I owned that role. You feel what I'm saying? And I think a lot of guys don't take that as seriously as they should. They take it with a grain of salt, thinking like, oh, the mom is going to step in and do this and do that. It's like, no, Negro. You the dad. If mom can't do it, then you do it. Period. Regardless of your, if she can't do this, then you do this. If she needs you to help with this, Negro, do that. Because it's not about her, it's not about you, it's about that kid. If your kid needs you, then Negro, be there. Period. End of sentence. End of sentence. Be there. Like I said before, kids want us to be present.
Yep.
They want us there.
Yes.
Just having us present, it speaks volumes.
Yep.
Having a dad present and active, it creates balance for the kid. Kashaun, you said it was an imbalance. I say that having a man in their dad involved creates balance. Because as a father, especially to a girl, we are the first example of what a man is and what they look for in a man. If there's no man involved, who are they going to go for manly guidance? Who can they trust? Who can they depend on? And who are they going to go to? Who can Ray Ray? Y'all see where I'm going with that, right?
No, no point.
That's why it's so important for us to be present.
You know what's crazy is that when they did research on perpetrators in the community, they often went for children, both male and female, with no father in the home. For that reason, because they could manipulate and infiltrate those homes or those children easier than children with family, like whole family, so to speak. So that's very interesting because, like you said, if there is no father, who are they going to turn to? The kids without fathers, or even community or support or a mentor, are likely to be susceptible to just anybody, strangers, or somebody who does not have the best intent for them. So they don't know that they're going down the wrong path, which is very interesting. So, yeah.
And my wife, she said here that there are some single moms that are married. That's a pill to swallow right there. And she made another comment, just because he's there doesn't necessarily mean that he's
he
there.
Sure is.
Which is why I say a father needs to be not just to be present, but to be active. You have to be active in the child's upbringing, in the rearing of the child. Teach a child the way that he should go, and he will never depart from it. Be present, be active.
Because some men think that provision and just providing is enough. And they're like, oh, well, I provide. I provide the food on the table. I pay the bills in the house. That should be enough. No. Being active, doing things, having dinner, the whatever family activity you're about to go out and do.
Do the daddy-daughter dance or something. You know
what I'm saying? The actual activities, not just being a provider. Oh my gosh. She is on point with that one.
She is on it. She's on it.
Yeah. My wife said, bingo.
Yep.
On it.
Yeah. But fatherhood, I think, is very important, not only because I'm a dad, because one, I do conduct fatherhood groups at the House of Correction here in Milwaukee. And that's going really well. And it's making me view fatherhood more intently, in the fact that I'm seeing guys who are engaged, but they're disconnected because they're in jail. And they want to learn better ways of being proactive. They want to learn proactive ways of being a father. And I think that that is great. And I'm gonna say this too before I move on. I do know that more brothers are stepping up and trying to be dads. They are trying to be fathers to their kids. And a big issue that I hear a lot of brothers speak is that it goes back to the projection of the vitriol that they have towards their baby daddies, and they don't want some of their kids to be around them because they don't like them, right? And it's
Okay,
hard.
Mark, let me chat. Okay, you said we could be
Yeah,
real
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Let me be real, okay? So here's the thing. I
Please.
think that's the biggest cop out, right?
Mm,
Because there are so many
mm-hmm.
systems in place now and things that we could do that, where you don't even necessarily have to have contact with the mother to be engaged with your child. So that's
Sure
just
don't.
the easy route, right? I mean, it's
Sure
like
don't.
take the easy bait and eat it. Stop. If you were interested in it, you would do the things, you would do whatever it takes. I know a lot of men, and I do mean that, that have full custody of their children. They are stepping
So,
up and stepping in and
so
doing
do I.
whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And then I know, some women who dad who and where, so it's like on both ends of the spectrum. But to simply say, well, this person, this one single entity is the reason I am not or do not have a relationship with my child, I think is the biggest cop out. I think it's the biggest, resource available to not take accountability and responsibility for what you created.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. Ooh.
Sorry.
That was a loaded one. Good job.
Hey,
But that's
I
a
really do appreciate you guys being on here and being vocal and being real with me, uh because this, as I said earlier, this is a topic that, you know, it needs to happen, right? It needs some venting. And uh I'm glad to have you two ladies here as a part of that venting process. I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to propose the scenario here, and I'm going to end it with a question. All right. So here goes. Our job as parents is to basically teach, guide, and nurture and prepare our kids to be successful, happy, productive members of our society. If you, as an adult, have been raised in a maladaptive environment, how can you, as a parent, prepare your child for success? You can only teach your child what you know. It goes back to what I said earlier. So here's the question. What are your thoughts on what it is to be an effective parent? What are your thoughts on what it is to be an effective parent? Stephanie, see the wheels turning, so you go.
definitely. So one of the things that I try to be is fair, especially in today's world, society. Oh my gosh. We went through some things, right? My age, I'm 41. So we went through changing technology. We went through Desert Storm, it was a war, right? But we deployed people overseas. I think it's Desert Storm. Oh, y'all, listen, that's a history lesson. But we had so many different changes with politics and different things that we experienced that were scary. We had the cryptosporidium scare where, we had the diarrhea stuff going on. There were so many different things that happened as we were growing up that we had to forcefully change through. And we had to get through. We had to have that thick skin, get through it. You're going to survive it, right? These kids today have it different than we do. And what I notice that I cannot do is just tell my child to buck up. You have to get through it. What I'm finding myself having to do is do a lot of inner healing from what I experienced growing up myself, whether it was DV within a home or the community or my own situations, or I'm sorry about the background noise, you all. Whatever it was that I experienced, I find myself, I have to heal myself in order to not respond from my hurt and my pain to my child and what her experience is towards the world today. So when the pandemic hit, instead of it being her experience, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm panicking. How does she feel being shut in and not being able to go to school? And now she's behind this computer screen and now she has to alter her life. Well, first of all, behind technology was a really good thing because technology is all these kids know. And so that was one thing. But then it actually hurt really bad educationally because she wasn't in school learning the proper algorithms or proper way to do algebra. So it was bad and good. But instead of me thinking of my child, I actually thought of myself. So the whole pandemic forced me to have to think about me parenting for me and my trauma, or am I parenting my child for her best results and how she's going to survive and how she is going to grow in this world? So I was always trying to protect my child from what I experienced up until the pandemic. And then I realized I don't have to protect her from the stuff I experienced growing up. That stuff isn't existent anymore. When the pandemic happened, I realized, oh, okay, I have to actually prepare her for this new world. So what's happening in the new world? So I started educating myself more on the new world. I stopped hiding from the new world. And I started educating myself and saying, okay, she needs to learn technology. She needs to learn how to survive in case of this and this and this and this and this. And then I started giving her real life scenarios, real life things. We started navigating the world more. We started orienteering, which is getting out into the world. If she gets lost, can she find her way back home without a GPS? How can she navigate knowing the North Star or using a compass, right? If she needs food, can she identify safe plants and things like that? So just getting back to like basics and survival. I know it's kind of scary, but that is what it is. So getting her used to technology as well as real life and just having her blended with both. And then I got her enrolled into mathnasium for her not so good grades with the math, where she was struggling during the pandemic, so that we could bring her up to speed there. But I support my child. I listen to her mental health struggles. You know, we talk about suicide because kids as young as 10 now are talking about suicide, and it's huge, especially here in the state of Wisconsin. Speaking of which, tidbit, you guys, what I learned as I started my new position with the 988 line is that everybody has mental health, but not everybody has mental illness. I was like, I've been in human services for so long, I never knew that there was a difference. I'm like, mental illness, mental health. No, there's actually a difference. We all have mental health, but we all don't have mental illness. So take that with you guys. But that's what I'm doing with my child is I am not using my fears and things that I'm still working through to heal myself and putting that on her. I'm actually learning from the world and preparing from the world, and teaching her what I have learned, and what I can possibly foresee as best as I can. So money, financing, things that I have messed up in my own bank account. Like, hey, let's not go negative. We're not doing that. Let's budget. If we need to provide a roof over our head, so we need the basics. Don't save for a rainy day. At the same time, make sure all your needs are met. I want to do all of those things for her. She's 15. She started driver's ed. You want to drive a car, you need to be responsible. What are you willing to do to pay for it? Here's insurance, all of those things. And being a good person, contributing to the community. We do community service. We volunteer different places. And she sees that I was a AmeriCorps, so I do all of those things. And I just enjoy setting that example for her. Hopefully she picks up on those things. But as a parent, that's pretty much what I do. I don't know what I'm doing though. So I'm doing the best. Okay, Mark and Miss Kashaun, I'm doing my best.
That's all we can do. Stephanie.
Oh, Miss Kashaun.
Oh, Kashaun, I'm sorry. Kashaun, sorry.
Yeah. So Stephanie, I love that response. I love, especially how you responded during the pandemic. And you made a great observation, right? It's in our era, it was more survivalist in nature, where, we were trained to just get through it, to persevere, to keep moving strong. And then, we get into the era of pandemic, and we're watching our kids and we're like, wait a minute, like, okay, what's the big deal? You can't go here. Okay, go get online and keep going, right? Until you start to talk to them and you're like, no, this is a really big deal. Wait a minute. Like this is, and so the shift happens where you're teaching them now how to regain and refunction socially. Because they've got to now create this atmosphere of, yes, the world exists online, but it also exists in person. And so how do I extend that? And so, for me, my challenge has been taking this world that the pandemic has trained us to embrace in social well-being online in a virtual setting, and now teaching my children that yes, it's that and this part. Like, yeah, you can text and you can get on social media and you can do all these things, but there's also some really cool magic that happens when you go in and you greet somebody face to face. Like, can we do that? Can you go in and have don't just text them, call them, and those types of things is what I found myself instilling. And another interesting point that you made was being really mindful of what traumas were yours, right? And not really projecting those onto, your daughter. And I think I found that to be true for me as well. It was like becoming really aware of what those traumas were, and getting my own healing and feeling, finding that my own safe space to process mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all things, so that I could be the best version of me every single day. And then instilling that in my kids, that it's not a one and done. It's a continual process. You're going to do this every day for here until forever. Take care of you so that you can take care of what matters to you is what I work to teach them to do. But it's like one of those things I find parenting is like, you always think you're doing it wrong until somebody taps in and knocks on your door and say, hey, you're actually doing really good at that. Keep going. Because it's like it's the test you always feel like you're failing.
Yep.
I mean, it really is. And it's like, but then you see these humans emerge, and you'll get a glimpse of them doing something, and you're like, I think I might have told you that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a continuous process though. I mean, it's ongoing, but I think, the whole idea of being aware, the biggest lesson for me was being aware that mental health is a real thing. Because where I was taught to just persevere, grit, and get through it, they're like, no, my headspace is not okay. And until it is, I'm not moving. We're not. And it was like, to respect that as being a real thing, and really getting into the space to say, oh, wait, that really is a thing. I've been trained to ignore it. You're saying we're not ignoring this because I can't move forward without it, and learning and having enough security within myself to understand that was a gap for me. and learning through that gap, that process gap, and continuing to move forward with them and for them at the same time, I think has been the biggest lesson.
Mm.
And
I
in
am
terms
so
of
glad.
mental health,
Go ahead.
in terms of mental health, ladies, I just want to ask, do you guys think that in our community, do we embrace mental, I'm not going to say, mental health and mental illness as
Do we embrace it?
much
No.
as we need to?
No. No, not in our,
It's a
now
stigma.
when you say community, do you mean our
She
culture,
said no.
our
Full stop,
community,
no.
our culture, everything that we are? No, we have been taught to bury it. Let me tell you, I think I shared this in a
Yeah.
previous podcast. When
You
I
shared that
had
you did.
postpartum depression, I was told by my mother, my Black mama, to don't go tell that doctor you're having those thoughts. They're going to take your child from you. First of all, they don't take white people's babies from them when they have postpartum depression. And the truth of the matter is they shouldn't be taking Black people's babies from them when they have postpartum depression. They should be providing a treatment for postpartum depression across the board. And I don't know why we have this stigma for mental health and mental illness and treatment for the longest time. Remember, I was talking about our boys and how they fast track them through special needs classes when they don't necessarily have special needs. Okay, but they put them on these medications to subdue them because, first of all, they're hyper, and what they actually need, they need engagement. They need more mentally challenged, not mentally challenging education.
Stimulating.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Listen, sometimes my words aren't there. they need more stimulating challenges. There we go. See, that's what I was trying to say. And our system was not set up to meet their needs, and that's what it was. And they didn't know that. And so just because they didn't understand that, you don't label our people, but mental health is a bad stigma. And if you notice our family structure, we always have that one person in the family that's assigned to the person with the mental health issues, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, this person taking care of this person. Why? Okay, or at the family reunion, you got the one person that's in the back talking to themselves, and it's like nobody deals with that person. Or did you go and pick this person up from the group home? That's how my family is. I have one cousin who is living in the group home. Something happened to him in high school. Somebody gave him a drug. He hasn't been right since, but he can talk. He has memories. He can work a job. But nobody wants to deal with him, and nobody really wants to understand. But I have this one dedicated cousin who was a nurse, and she loves the mess out of him. But our family doesn't want to deal with the fact that he has mental health, or a mental illness at this point. It's schizophrenia. I think that's what it's labeled. But we all have mental health, right? But we don't all have mental illness. But so what if we do have a mental illness? There's treatment. And if it's medication, or if it's one-on-one treatment with a doctor, there is something that we can do. We're human at the end of the day, and it doesn't make us all dangerous to be around, but we've all avoided it. And it's dangerous to avoid it, because when you have a pedophile that is in your family who need that, now that is a mental illness that needs to be tended to. You know, you have somebody who is just running around grabbing and groping and touching or sexually assaulting people. That needs to be tended to. Not you are just a fast young lady. No, there is no such thing as a fast young lady when I'm fully clothed, okay? And this person is fully mentally ill. There's a huge difference, but we label that, or as our culture, our family, however you want to call it, we have done a horrible job in our families, putting a hush hush on it. Oh, don't say that out loud. Don't say that about that family member. No, And now this is where that community piece can come together and finally speak up. Now, the ones that roam the streets, right? The ones that are out here roaming the streets and they're under the bridges and they're not safe. Where are their families? They're out here, just not safe. And there's so much that can be said about the stigma, right? And you've got the one poor, the Hamilton family, okay? The cop that was afraid of him. He did not have to be afraid of him, okay? He needed education. Our system needs education. We need education as a people. And that's what it is. I needed education. I did not know the difference between mental health and mental illness 3 months ago, you guys. And I've been in human services for over 15 years. I just knew mental health and well-being, right? And there's significant difference between the two. So if I've been working in this field for so many years, and it's the simple education piece, imagine the great things we could do if we just educated everybody, and including our families. I tell my mother all day, every day, hey, I'm going to therapy. You would benefit from going to therapy, because how you talking to everybody in this household right now, you sound like you need a little bit of therapy today, you know? And for once she went to therapy. She didn't like the cost, but at least she went. That's progress, you guys. But we don't, for whatever reason, our community or our culture, we shy away from it. We need it. We need to talk. We need education. We need support, and support one another. Don't say, oh, that person crazy. You know, that's just crazy cousin, this and that and the other. No.
I think it's because though we're still working to get out of the adaptive barrier of, you know, what goes on in this house, or you don't see nothing, you don't say nothing, or say, you know, it's all the things that we have been trained up culturally to accept. And now we're trying to break free from those, but that's a process. It's not just as simple as, okay, now I'm gonna go out and get help. That takes courage, because everything in you and everything around you has been groomed to say, you don't say nothing. You don't speak when grown folks are talking. You know, you mind what those white people say. It's all the things that we have been taught to do. And then so you get outside of this and it's like, okay, do something different. Says who? At what cost? What's the repercussion, right? Because I think that's the first step out, is just understanding how much of that was stigmatized because of our training, because of our upbringing, and then really working one at a time to just reframe what that really means, to go out and go get help. To, you know, I love my therapist. I love my coach. I love my, like, all of these people help to bring forth the Kashaun that's here today, because she wouldn't exist otherwise, not in this fashion. So it just becomes, you know, seeing more of that and having someone, you know, look to understand, how do I get there? Okay, great. This is what I did. And this is what me reaching out and getting help. This is what that meant and how it showed up for me. And perhaps it could do that for you too. But until we start to get in there and have some of those conversations where it's not a joke, it's not a ha ha he, it's no, this thing really changed my life. This changed my world and what I'm experiencing right now, because I did these things.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yes, ma'am. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing right here. This is why you guys are here with me having this conversation, because I had to do a gut check. You did what I'm saying? And I had to realize that I was dealing with something that was beyond my control. And it was controlling me. I wasn't in control of it.
It was controlling.
If I would have stayed the course and hid, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I might not even be here. So I thank God for the people that stepped up to me in my life when I needed it, to have these open and honest conversations about mental health, taking care of yourself, and taking care of your mental health. Not mental illness. I'm taking care of my mental health by acknowledging that I have a mental illness and that I have to do something about it to keep that in check.
Amen.
See, I'm learning what the difference between mental health and mental illness is.
Yay!
And
Awesome.
you know, it's not something that we have to necessarily be ashamed of, because everybody deals with it, right? You know, we've all had a moment in our lives where we felt low, right?
Yeah.
Does that, I mean, you had a depressed moment or an angry moment or whatever. I mean, we had moments, but we dealt with it. It becomes a problem when you can't deal with it. In our community, we need to learn that there are avenues that you can take to help with the issues that you're going through in here, because keeping all this stuff in here isn't helping. Keeping all the tense, the stress and all this stuff that's going on in here, it's not helping. It's not helping at all. Get it out. Talk it out. Reach out and talk to somebody. Because like you said, Stephanie, you got kids 10, 11, 12 years old talking about taking their lives? Huh? This, in this day and age, where, like you said, Kashaun, information is at our fingertips. You can look on your phone and do an app about damn near anything. And they're talking about taking their lives at 10? Huh? Make that make sense to me. It doesn't. That means that there's a bigger issue going on in our communities than we know about. And it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed. We cannot continue to sit back here and kick our feet on the table like everything is cool. It's not cool. It's not cool. Like Stephanie said, you know, we got the crazy auntie, you know, the touchy-feely uncle that everybody knows, but what are we doing about it?
Mhm.
We're not checking the crazy aunt. We're not checking the pedophile uncle. We're not checking them. And then you have kids that are around these people, and then they get touched and violated. Now they want to take their own lives because, damn, their whole view of life has just been screwed by the crazy aunt
Or
or the pedo uncle.
or they start questioning their identity. We talk about this whole LGBTQ that has come around, and there's the naturalness of, you know, people in their sexuality, right? There's a natural, people have for centuries, they can choose their sexuality, right? That there's the natural part of that, but then there's the influenced part of that, because they were they were not harassed, what is it, assaulted, violated, there we go. And that's the part where it's not fair for them, because now they're forever changed. Maybe that's not who they really wanted to be, but because of that incident, now their lives and who they are, they're forever changed, you know. And it's just not fair. Sorry, I just wanted to chime in on that, because, you know, you have people that, you know, we have that whole thing going on too, where it's like, now people, that's a whole different topic too. You have people that say, I was assaulted and now I fear men and now I only want to be with women. Or you have men that say, I was assaulted and now I only want to be with men, you know. And that's another layer to things, like, with, you know, with declining populations and birth rates, do we need more? Is it heterosexual? Am I saying that right? Heterosexual. We need more people to have babies, right? But it's just so that everything is kind of intertwined, but
it's all connected.
Yeah.
Didn't expect to go this deep. Dang, Mark.
Wow. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about, or you guys want to have a part 2 to this?
I'm ready for whatever you all are. You guys are wonderful. You both are absolutely great to talk with.
I agree. This has been an excellent conversation.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
think I'll step out and just say this would be a great segue into a part two, because we're clear on what the challenges are, what the stigmas are, what
Mhm.
things are present in the community. But you know, getting to the point where you spin the table and we start to think about collectively, now what can we do? What's our offer into our communities? What is our give back? I
Yep.
mean, and you think from a solo perspective as well as from a collective perspective, you know, when we rally those that are behind us, and how do we do that, and what is our contribution to those that are coming after us? Like, let's have that discussion.
Yep.
I
Indeed.
think that's like the logical next step.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Because we have
Because
all
we
these
did
complaints. What are the
Yeah.
solutions?
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I mean, we did touch on some, solutions or whatever, but yeah, we definitely can use a part two where we can focus more on solutions and avenues that,
More
people can
in
take
depth.
to, yes, right, right, right. Dig a little deeper.
Dig a
Yeah.
little deeper. Dig a little deeper.
Okay. Cool. Anything else you guys want to share? We good?
I've talked
This is
a
a
lot.
great conversation. This is a great
Absolutely.
conversation.
We touched on a lot. And I thank you guys. I really do. I thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to, spend it with me and vent and really, chop it up, and hopefully people can grasp the depth of our conversation, because help is around the corner, guys. And all you gotta do is pick up your
Take
phone.
advantage.
Information is right there. Information is right at our fingertips, right? We
Yep.
can't sit in silence. We cannot sit in silence, and we can't act like everything is good when it isn't. We can't. And they can't either. It's not, they're doing themselves a serious injustice by living in denial. And we need more conversations like this to blow the lid off of that shit, to be blunt.
Yep.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
I agree.
So, all right. So if you guys don't have anything else, this is Mark Ross again, and this has been another episode of the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. Remember, self-care is important, so make sure that your mental and physical health becomes a priority every day first. You guys have a good night.
All right, you too. See you
Bye-bye.
guys.
All right.
See ya.
Y'all take care now.
Bye.